Hey there, YouTube friends and family. It's a guy with beard, guns, and gear. Kind of a departure over, well, sort of a departure. The videos that I've been making lately have been focused on, or I guess not really focused on, but we've been talking a lot about, the Carcano and the 303 British, those firearms that were used both before the Second World War and during the Second World War. And then I kind of got off a little bit and went on to the SKS because I think that the Russian tool manufacturing and just like the history and what they went through post-World War II is really something. And then how they got to that point, I mean, they were almost a demolished country, right? Like it was in pieces. And then, you have post-World War II and then the Cold War starting up, and then USSR kind of doing their business, and then we can see where USSR is now, or not USSR, but Russia is now. So I mean, they kind of have an interesting history dating back hundreds of years, maybe even thousands. I don't know. I would say I'm more interested in the last 120 years as far as Russia goes. So it got me thinking, because I was going into my safe for something, and I noticed that this firearm was a little bit dry, so I was going to take it out and put a little coat of oil on it. And then I'm like, you know what? This is, I'm not going to say it's rare, but I haven't seen a lot of them around. It's certainly old. And again, it kind of is going back to those Russian produced firearms, and some of the things we're learning about it now, which we had no idea was going on at the time. So I'm going to talk, and finding any information on this, by the way, is extremely difficult. Again, because it's Russia, and they don't want to talk about what they did post-World War II or what they're even doing now. So it's hard to get factual information out of them, but I'm going with everything else that I've found in my research. So you'll probably recognize, for those of you who are firearms enthusiasts, or maybe you're new to firearms, and you're kind of, looking at these old guns and saying, wow, they're really cool. What are they? And this used to be, one of the great duck hunting guns of back in the day. You can't use these so much for duck hunting anymore. This one is particularly old, so I don't even know if it would be safe for steel shot, which is what you're required to use. In your state regulations and your provincial regulations might be different, but here we have to use steel shot. And I'm not sure this would be safe for steel shot. What could you do with it besides that? It's a cool field gun. Partridge hunting, pheasant, anything like that. If you kind of want to do a throwback hunt, a little nostalgia, you go walking with that with the action open, like waiting for, and it's a little stiff, but waiting for something to come out in front of you, and they're just really cool old firearms. This one was purchased by my uncle, and it was purchased somewhere in the late 70s. So I don't have an exact date on it. Looking at the stamping, and there's a ton of stamping in here as well. If you take this thing apart like any other double barrel shotgun, right? You open up the little lever, you pull that out, and then break the action open, and there's stamping on the other side. So I can tell the plant that it came from, and I have an idea of the year. I think this particular one was produced in 1975, and everything I can find on the Bacal USSR made, which is another cool feature, and we'll get a zoom in on that on the video. It says right on the side, made in USSR, which I think is cool because that doesn't exist anymore. So we can only talk about the former Soviet Union, but when this was going, she was going strong, right? Cold War, like all of that stuff. And so it's really interesting that while this was all going on, they were still producing shotguns and selling them to a foreign market. I mean, they knew what they were up to. Kind of cool features on it, and I'll talk about what some other people have said about it as well. So this was made in a town, and I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing this because I'm not Russian, but it's Izhevsk, which is like Izhevsk. It's a city about 2 hours flight away from Moscow, and it's in the Ural Mountains. So because of where the location of the city is, during World War II, it was kind of left alone. The Luftwaffe never made it there, And we know what happened when the Russians marched, or the Germans marched into Leningrad. So it was relatively untouched. In fact, it was producing firearms. It still produces firearms. That same city. So it's called, I think, Mechanical Plant, the Ishvisk Mechanical Plant. And they were producing the Tokarevs there. They were producing for the military as well as civilian. And during the Cold War, it was actually forbidden for foreigners to even enter the city because of this huge plant that they were turning out weapons in. And maybe like the Area 51 in the US, who knows, working on some spy stuff. Again, they're still producing Bickel shotguns. You can pick them up. I don't think you'll find a cool one that says stamped, on the side, made in USSR, new. But they're still making them, and now, I mean, they have chrome barrels, and they've kept up with technology more or less. But these shotguns, when they were produced, people were picking them up because they were extremely cheap. Now they're not as reasonable. You can find them used, luckily, if you're lucky enough, and depending on the condition, anywhere from $400 to $800 Canadian. But still. And the Russians are made, and I've said it before, right? They made good tanks, good watches, and good firearms. And this is no exception. I mean, it's not going to win any beauty contests. It's got a little bit of kind of, I want to say like half-assed engraving because it's not very deep into the metal. The bluing job on the barrels itself is kind of a black matte, which is nice. I like that. But it's not the most resistant thing to rust, and it will take some pitting. So you really have to keep these things wet and greasy if you're storing them for a long period of time. And it seems to me like the metal just soaks that up like nobody's business. So that's why I pulled this thing out, just to check it, make sure everything was okay. I'm gonna put a coat of oil on it and back. And then I thought, well, this is a cool shotgun, and people would probably like to see this. I like looking at it, and you can see, like, you got the two trigger side by side. It's a 28.5-inch barrel. It weighs somewhere around 7.5 pounds. The double trigger, as I said, and you can fire them both at the same time, but you better have a good stance when you do it. It's got quite a kick. And the safety on the tang, much like the modern Mossbergs. So, and a very nice knurled kind of raised catch on that safety. The action itself is a break open. It's a little bit hard, stiff. That's what she said. When you break that action open, but I mean, these things are tanks, and that's what they compare these shotguns with, is like a T-34, which is probably still on its way to the Ukraine. Like these things are just made to, much like the SKS, much like the AK-47, right? Not complicated, simple. Good metals, good materials. They're not made from recycled tanks. I saw a lot of those kind of comments. The wood is not made from the railways they pulled up during the Second World War or whatever. No, that's not true. The wood on it, the quality itself is actually pretty good, but the varnish, and this is like very typical of Russian. Good materials, kind of poor finishing, right? Like they could have done so much to this. People say, well, it's not going to win any beauty contests. I think they're cool, and I really like them. They pattern really tight, according to everybody. I just picked this up a little while ago, so I haven't shot it yet, but I am going to go out and pattern it, and just to see how tight those patterns are, because that's what people are talking about. Now, there's various, and the reason why I'm getting them back to, I think this one here is around a 1975 manufacture. Although they manufactured the IJ58M, which is the model that this one is, from 1970 to 1976, there has been models of this very similar shotgun. I think they went through like 4 iterations from 1958 all the way up to 1986. So, various numbers. I don't know. I can't read the Cyrillic alphabet. But if you pull this off, there's a ton of stamps. So I know the exact factory that it came from because somebody else was asking for the similar question. So thanks for that. But they're just really cool old shotguns. Not so practical for today's use, where we want kind of a multi-purpose shotgun that we can go turkey hunting, duck hunting, you know, partridge hunting, all of that stuff. You could certainly, you know, if you went back in the 70s, you could use this for duck hunting. This is about as good as you were going to get. And that's what a lot of people had. Now, I just think side-by-side double barrels are just cool looking. I mean, you know, kind of like the old coach guns, you know, the old homesteader. Everybody had one of these in their farm, you know, hanging up over the fireplace or whatever. Just, I just think they're cool, and you know, I get off on the history of the old firearms, and I like Russian firearms. I love the simplicity of them. These things are known to be workhorses, as I've said before. They will take a ton of abuse. I guarantee you, I could put a couple of shells in this right now, go in my backyard and pull the trigger, and it's going to go off. I guarantee it. Even if I left it and just let it go forever and ever and ever, it would still go. They didn't even make very many of this particular model. I think there's, I mean, I don't know, 1,360,000 of this type of side-by-side firearm, but that's going into the other variants as well. This one, I believe there was about 250,000 of them, because afterwards they went to a new model in 1977, and you'll see the IJ58MA stamp. So if you have one of these hanging around, or if you have something else that's really cool and interesting and double barrel, I love Russian firearms. I think it's really cool. I think it's cool that we can get our hands on them and kind of see what they were working with. And you know, I don't know, for some reason I just picture these guys, like, you know, sitting around tooling these weapons out, you know, like smoking cigarettes, drinking vodka, and you know, shooting the shit, literally, and having a good old time, and turning out some fine firearms. So I hope you like this video. If you have any suggestions for me, I would certainly appreciate it. I love all the comments that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing people from all over the place commenting. I've got a couple of surprises coming. I just ordered a Bergara in a 6.5 Creedmoor, which I've been on the fence a little bit about. So we're going to do an initial review on that, and then I want to take that thing out to the range, get it sighted in, and see what we're dealing with as far as accuracy. But that's on my list of things to come. I've got my Glock coming back. Some other things that we're going to talk about and do as well. The temperature has been garbage lately. We've been hit with snowstorms and frigid temperatures. So I've made plans to go out to the range, and I've had to cancel them just because Mother Nature doesn't want me going out there. But anyway, I hope you click that like button, leave a comment. I love hearing your guys' comments, where you're coming from. I love to know what experiences you guys have had. And, you know, talking to people across the States and as well in Canada, you know, people that are using these for practical applications. The last guy, you know, we're talking about the SKS, and he was saying that, you know, he uses it for hog hunting. It's really cool. I think they're fantastic firearms. I think this is a fantastic firearm. Please hit the like, subscribe, keep following me. We've got some more stuff coming, and I look forward to hearing from you. Have a good night.